My perfect sister got engaged and demanded I give her my dream wedding venue that I'd been saving for since I was 16. Now, my parents are threatening to cut me out of their will if I don't give it up. But Grandma heard this and called with some shocking news that made everyone's jaw drop. I'm a 25-year-old woman, and I really need some advice about a situation with my sister, who is 28. It's tearing my family apart. I'm literally sitting in my car crying as I type this because I don't know what to do anymore. I've been saving for my dream wedding venue since I was 16, carefully putting away every spare dollar I could find. Now my sister is demanding I give it up to her. The situation has gotten so bad that my parents are threatening to write me out of their will if I don't comply. I know this might sound trivial to some people, but this venue represents the one thing I've never let my sister take from me. And now, I'm at my breaking point. Here's some background. My sister Emma has always been the golden child. She's beautiful, successful, and can do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Growing up, everything I had or wanted eventually became hers, because she deserved it more. When I got a new phone for my birthday at 13, Emma had a complete meltdown at the dinner table, screaming about how unfair it was that I got a better phone than her. She threw her plate across the room and locked herself in her bedroom for 2 days, refusing to come out. My parents eventually gave her my phone and got me a basic model instead, saying I needed to be understanding of my sister's feelings. The cheerleading incident in high school was even worse. I practiced for months to make the squad, staying after school every day to perfect my routines. When I finally made it, Emma went ballistic. She wasn't even interested in cheerleading before, but suddenly she claimed she had always dreamed of being a cheerleader. She cried to our parents about how I was stealing her spotlight and trying to overshadow her. My parents made me quit the team the next day, saying Emma's mental health was more important than my hobby. Emma quit the squad 3 weeks later, saying it was boring, but I wasn't allowed to rejoin. This has been the pattern my entire life. The one thing I've never given up on is my dream wedding venue, the Rose Garden at Hampton Estate. I fell in love with it when I attended a cousin's wedding there at age 16. It's this stunning historic mansion with beautiful gardens, and I've been putting away money every month since then to afford it. I'm not even engaged yet, but this venue means everything to me. It's the one thing I refuse to let Emma take away. Well, last week Emma got engaged to her boyfriend of 6 months, Tyler. The engagement itself was a shock since they'd only met at a charity gala in January, but Emma has always moved fast when she wants something. During the engagement dinner at my parents' house, which, of course, had to be a lavish affair with all our relatives present, Emma waited until everyone was seated to make her grand announcement. She clinked her champagne glass to get everyone's attention, then with this sickeningly sweet smile, she announced that she and Tyler would be getting married at the Rose Garden. The way she looked directly at me while saying it made it clear she knew exactly what she was doing. I tried to keep my voice steady as I mentioned that I had been saving for that venue for 9 years. She just laughed, that condescending laugh I've known my whole life, and said, "Oh, please. You're not even dating anyone. I'm actually getting married, so I should have it." She then proceeded to describe, in detail, all her plans for the venue, completely ignoring the fact that I was sitting right there, trying not to cry into my soup. Tyler looked uncomfortable, but he didn't say anything. No one ever does when Emma pulls these stunts. My parents immediately sided with her and told me I was being selfish. They said Emma's wedding was actually happening, while mine was just a fantasy, so I needed to stop being difficult and let her have the venue. When I refused, my dad threatened to write me out of their will if I didn't stop being so selfish and stubborn. I stood my ground and told them absolutely not. I'd been saving for this specific venue for nearly a decade and wasn't going to give it up. Emma started crying and screaming about how I was ruining her special day. My mom said I was being a terrible sister and that I needed to grow up and stop being jealous of Emma's happiness. The situation got even worse when Emma went behind my back and tried to book the venue herself. She actually created a fake email account pretending to be me and contacted the venue management. Thankfully, I had already put down a deposit years ago to hold future dates, so they required original documentation that she couldn't forge. The venue manager actually called me to verify because Emma's behavior seemed so suspicious. When Emma found out her plan had failed, she completely lost it. She showed up at my apartment at 11 p.m., pounding on my door and screaming so loudly that my neighbors called the police. She was yelling about how I was ruining her life and threatening to make my life hell if I didn't sign over my deposit to her. When I refused to open the door, she started sharing embarrassing childhood stories about me on social media and telling all our relatives that I was trying to sabotage her wedding out of jealousy. My phone was flooded with messages from family members calling me selfish and demanding I give Emma what she wanted. Some cousins even started a group chat specifically to discuss what a terrible sister I was being. The pressure was overwhelming, and I started having anxiety attacks every time my phone buzzed with a new message. After 3 days of nonstop harassment from my family, with my phone constantly buzzing with guilt-tripping messages and Emma posting passive-aggressive comments about selfish sisters on social media, I finally broke down. It was 2 a.m., and I was having another anxiety attack when I remembered how Grandma used to be my safe haven during Emma's tantrums when we were kids. With shaking hands, I called my grandmother, my dad's mom, not even caring about the late hour. This is where things took an unexpected turn that would change everything. Grandma got very quiet and then told me something shocking. Apparently, the Rose Garden estate actually belongs to her family. My great-grandfather had left it to her in his will, and she still owns it. She had never told anyone in the family because she wanted to avoid drama over who would inherit it. Grandma was furious when she heard how Emma and my parents were treating me. She immediately called my dad and told him that she was leaving the entire estate to me in her will, not just the venue rights, but the whole property. She said anyone who tried to bully me over it would be completely cut out. The fallout has been explosive. Emma is hysterical, calling me every name in the book and accusing me of manipulating Grandma against her. My parents are freaking out because the estate is worth millions. They're now trying to backtrack, saying they were just upset and didn't mean their threats about disinheriting me, but Grandma isn't having any of it. She's already met with her lawyer to make the changes official. I feel vindicated but also guilty. Part of me wonders if I should just let Emma have her wedding there to keep the peace. But another part of me is so tired of always having to give up everything to her. This venue has been my dream for so long, and for once, I want to stand my ground. Update 1. Thank you all for the overwhelming support and advice. A lot has happened since my original post, and I wanted to give you an update. First, Emma showed up at my workplace with our mom, causing a huge scene in the lobby. She was wearing her wedding dress, yes, she had already bought one even though she didn't have a venue, and was screaming about how I'd stolen her inheritance and ruined her perfect wedding. She had printed out copies of a contract she drafted, demanding I sign over exclusive rights to use the venue. My coworkers watched in shock as she threw the papers at me and started knocking things off people's desks when I refused to sign. Security had to physically escort them out, while Emma kept screaming that I was dead to her and that she would make sure everyone knew what kind of sister you really are. My mom just stood there the whole time, nodding along with Emma's hysterics like this was perfectly normal behavior. Thankfully, my boss witnessed the whole thing. She was incredibly understanding and suggested I work from home for a few days. She even helped me document everything for my lawyer, saying she'd never seen anything quite like it in her 20 years of management. My dad then tried a different approach. He called offering to compensate me if I convinced Grandma to change her mind. He offered to buy me a car and pay for my future wedding, anywhere else I wanted. When I refused, he got angry and accused me of tearing the family apart with my selfishness. But the most shocking development came from my grandmother. She invited me over for tea at her beautiful Victorian home, the same house where my dad and aunt grew up. As we sat in her sunroom overlooking her prized rose garden, she revealed even more family history that made me understand why she was taking such a strong stand now. Apparently, Emma isn't the first golden child in our family to act this way. Over tea and my grandmother's famous lavender cookies, the ones she only makes for serious conversations, she shared painful stories from the past that she had never told anyone. My aunt, my dad's sister, had pulled similar stunts years ago. She demanded family heirlooms and threw tantrums until she got her way. She had actually managed to get her hands on my great-grandmother's antique jewelry collection, which should have been split between her and my dad. She threw such an epic tantrum at a family Christmas party, breaking dishes and threatening to tell everyone about my grandfather's secrets, which Grandma later told me were completely made up, that my grandparents gave in just to keep the peace. Grandma showed me pictures of my great-grandmother wearing those same jewels at her own wedding at the Rose Garden. Her eyes teared up as she described how she had always hoped to pass them down through generations of family brides. She said watching my aunt sell those priceless family heirlooms, piece by piece, to fund her shopping addiction broke her heart, and she's regretted not putting a stop to it ever since. History repeats itself, she said quietly, stirring her tea, but only if we let it. Grandma showed me old photos of the estate from when it was first built and told me stories about growing up there. It meant so much to hear these family stories and feel like someone finally understood why this place was so special to me. She's now invited me to start helping her manage the property, saying it's time I learn about my inheritance. Update 2. Things have escalated dramatically. Emma got engaged in June and wanted an October wedding this year. Since I wouldn't give up the venue, she and my parents tried to go around me and Grandma. They contacted the current venue management company, which handles the day-to-day operations, and tried to book it using my mom's maiden name to hide their identity. Fortunately, Grandma had already informed the management company about the situation. When they realized who Emma was, they refused to book it. Emma completely lost it. She showed up at the estate during another couple's wedding tour, causing a huge scene. She had to be removed by security. The other couple was obviously upset, and now Grandma is worried about the venue's reputation. As a result, she's decided to terminate the contract with the current management company when it expires next month. She's asked me to take over managing the property full-time, saying she trusts me to protect our family's legacy. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I finally have some good news to share. After the incident at the estate, Emma was forced to face some hard truths. The incident went viral locally after someone posted a video titled Bridezilla Crashes Wedding Venue Tour, which got picked up by several local news stations. In the video, you can clearly see Emma screaming at the tour guide and throwing a vase of flowers when she was told she couldn't book the venue. The couple taking the tour looked absolutely terrified. The video has over 100,000 views now, and Emma has faced serious backlash from the community. Several local wedding vendors have blacklisted her. Her workplace even asked her to take a leave of absence because clients were uncomfortable working with her after seeing the video. But the final straw came when Tyler, her fiancé, saw the video. He had been out of town on business when it happened, and Emma had told him a completely different version of events. When he saw how she actually behaved, he was horrified. He postponed the wedding indefinitely, saying they needed to work on some things, particularly her anger management and entitlement issues. Emma has started therapy. For the first time in her life, she's having to confront her entitled behavior. She even sent me a lengthy email apologizing for her actions. And for once, it wasn't about her feelings or what she wanted. In her email, she wrote about specific incidents from our childhood that she now realizes were wrong. She acknowledged how she systematically took everything that mattered to me, from the phone to the cheerleading squad to every birthday party that had to be about her. She admitted that she had no right to demand my dream venue or try to steal my inheritance. She said she was finally beginning to understand how much pain she caused me over the years. The email ended with her saying she wouldn't blame me if I never forgave her, but that she was committed to becoming a better person and sister. While I appreciate the apology and I'm glad she's getting help, I'm keeping my distance for now. 25 years of trauma doesn't disappear with one email, no matter how heartfelt it might be. Final update. It's been a year since my original post, and what a year it has been. The estate has become more successful than ever under my management. We've been featured in several wedding magazines, and our booking calendar is full for the next 2 years. It's been incredibly fulfilling to take on this role, and I've discovered a passion for event planning and historic preservation that I never realized I had. As for Emma, her relationship with Tyler didn't survive the fallout from her behavior. He broke things off permanently after learning more about her pattern of entitlement. Several of our cousins, who were fed up with Emma's antics over the years, reached out to Tyler to warn him about her past. He decided he couldn't move forward with someone who had so little respect for boundaries and other people's feelings. Emma is still in therapy, and according to mutual friends, she seems to be making genuine progress in understanding her behavior. While we maintain very limited contact, I've noticed a change in her tone. She's quieter, less confrontational, and more reflective. It's a slow process, but at least she's trying. My parents finally apologized, although it took some prodding from Grandma. When Grandma threatened to sell her other property rather than leave it to them as inheritance, they realized how serious she was. They admitted that they had failed me by always giving in to Emma's demands. My mom even broke down crying during a recent visit, saying they hadn't meant to hurt me and were only trying to keep the peace. While I appreciate the acknowledgement, I'm taking it with a grain of salt. They've made similar promises before, only to revert to their old behavior when Emma threw her next tantrum. Time will tell if they've truly changed. The best news of all? I'm engaged. I met my fiancé, James, through the estate. He's a historical preservation architect who came to consult on some renovations. During his first visit, I gave him a tour of the property, pointing out areas that needed restoration. We discovered we shared a passion for historical architecture and preservation. He was particularly fascinated by the original Victorian greenhouse, which had fallen into disrepair. We spent hours discussing different restoration techniques and the history of the estate. One coffee meeting to discuss renovation plans turned into dinner, where we talked until the restaurant was closing. James confessed later that he had taken on the project for a much lower fee than usual because he was intrigued by both the property and its passionate young manager. We started dating while working together to restore the greenhouse, and he says he knew he was in love with me the day I spent 6 hours researching period-appropriate glass panels to make sure we got the details just right. When he proposed, he orchestrated the perfect surprise. He told me we needed to check something in the newly restored greenhouse at sunset. When we arrived, he had filled it with hundreds of the same roses that my great-grandmother had grown there. He had tracked them down through historical records, even finding an original catalog from the 1920s that listed the exact variety. Surrounded by those historically accurate roses, James got down on one knee and said he couldn't imagine spending his life with anyone else who cared as much about preserving beauty and history as I do. What makes it even more special is that James completely understands my attachment to the rose garden. He says he fell in love with both me and the estate, and he's been incredibly supportive throughout all the family drama. When he proposed, he did it in the same spot where I first fell in love with the venue at age 16, under the ancient oak tree in the main garden. We're planning our wedding for next spring, and yes, it will be at the Rose Garden. I've been working with a historian to recreate elements from my great-grandmother's wedding, including replanting her favorite roses and restoring the original garden paths. James has been incredible, using his expertise to ensure every detail is perfect while making sure I don't get overwhelmed with the planning. Emma has been invited to the wedding on one condition: she must continue her therapy and maintain appropriate boundaries. So far, she's been respectful and hasn't caused any issues. My parents are still walking on eggshells around me, but they've promised to behave during the wedding. I'll believe it when I see it, but for now, I'm cautiously optimistic. The most meaningful part of the wedding planning has been involving my grandmother. She'll be walking me down the aisle, and it just feels right after everything she's done for me. She's been sharing stories about all the celebrations that have taken place at the Rose Garden over the generations. We're incorporating many family traditions she's told me about, like having the ceremony under the ancient oak tree where countless couples in our family have exchanged vows. Sometimes, standing your ground leads to more than you ever dreamed possible. Not only did I keep my dream venue, but I found my dream career and my dream partner in the process. More importantly, I finally learned that it's okay to stand up for myself, that I don't have to give up my happiness to keep the peace. The Rose Garden isn't just my wedding venue anymore. It's become my legacy, and I couldn't be prouder to be its guardian for the next generation. Thank you, Reddit, for giving me the courage to stand up for myself. And thank you, Grandma, for showing me that I didn't have to give up my dreams to keep the peace.